Multiple men are suing the University of Minnesota, its Board of Regents, and other out-of-state hockey associations, alleging a one-time U of M hockey coach groomed and sexually abused them when they were teens.
The lawsuit claims the U knew about some of the allegations and covered them up. Chris Harapsky spent the day digging into the details.
In a new federal civil lawsuit, 5 men claim former University of Minnesota assistant men's hockey coach Thomas Chico Adradas sexually abused them as teens, some before, during, and long after his 1 year with the Gophers. The lawsuit also claims the U of M knew about the allegations back in 1985 and did nothing to prevent it from happening elsewhere.
Had they done what was right, Chico never would have gotten to me, the others before me, and God forbid, anyone who was after me.
According to the lawsuit, in 1983, Adradas began sexually assaulting a then 16-year-old hockey standout named Michael Sachs, blindfolding him, binding his hands and feet under the guise that a woman named Sheila would perform oral sex. Court documents allege Adradas took money, inviting other adults to do the same.
Sheila was this fictitious character that Chico postured to every one of the victims.
While at the U of M in 1984, the lawsuit says Adradas solicited U of M hockey players with his Sheila offer. Captain Tony Kellen was immediately suspicious. The lawsuit claims the players set up a sting operation, taking Adradas' offer and catching him in the act, finding, quote, Adradas was Sheila and was performing oral sex on hockey players without their knowledge, end quote. Court documents say the players went right to the athletic director, Paul Giel.
In 1985, they knew about Chico's inappropriate behavior with players, the sexual assault allegations. They knew about it. And they didn't investigate him, didn't report him. They didn't do anything. Even worse, they concealed his crimes.
The lawsuit says after the season, Adradas was forced to resign. Head coach Bob Buteau was fired, and incoming freshman player Michael Sachs allegedly told not to come to school.
The press would be too negative about him and Chico. Scared, confused. At 17 years of age, a superstar's career was over. It was taken from him.
Adradas went on to coach AAA in youth hockey in Illinois and eventually coaching at Robert Morris University until his resignation in 2018. 5 former players have come forward. Attorneys believe there are more. We reached out to the U of M, which said the university cannot comment on ongoing litigation, though it should be noted the U hired a law firm last year when these allegations first surfaced, which confirmed that the athletic department did know about these allegations back in '85, but failed to act.
Wow. Thank you, Chris.